In 2007, FIFA controversially banned international football matches from being played at high altitude. The ruling caused outrage across South America, with Bolivia's president even describing the ban as a form of football apartheid. And just a year later, the decision was reversed entirely. So what on earth happened? The controversy began after Brazilian football officials argued that playing at high altitude posed significant health risks to players not acclimatised to the conditions. The issue gained international attention in 2007 after players from Brazilian club Flamengo required bottled oxygen during a match in Bolivia played nearly 4,000 metres above sea level. To give you some perspective, I'm currently standing only 400 metres above sea level. These complaints ultimately contributed to FIFA's decision to introduce the ban, particularly affecting Bolivia, Ecuador and Colombia, restricting their ability from hosting World Cup qualification matches in high altitude cities. But what are the significant health risks of playing football at high altitude? And if they were so significant, why was the ban eventually revoked? Unfortunately, I've never been very good at science, so I got in contact with someone who is. For people who might not understand the sort of science behind it, what happens to the body when you're training at high altitudes?
At the lung, there's a lower oxygen that is able to diffuse into the blood, which then downstream means that we transport less blood to the muscles that we're using for muscle contraction, for movement, and that then leads to a drop in kind of our physical outputs, such as the amount of distance that we can cover. If we're doing kind of repeated sprints, the kind of total sprints might be lower or reduced. And then again, there's some health consequences of being at altitude for prolonged periods at kind of moderate to high altitudes, where we can have nausea, headaches caused from what we'd call acute mountain sickness.
FIFA basically proposed that players should arrive at least 1 week before matches played between 2,500 and 3,000 metres above sea level. So from a sort of physiological standpoint, would that have made a meaningful difference then?
Yeah, what we call acclimation is repeated exposures to environmental stress. And from an altitude perspective, it does take a prolonged period of time. So within a week, that's probably the minimum. Yeah, a week at altitude and we start to develop some of the ventilatory adaptations. And then it takes up to weeks, even, up to as many as 3 weeks to develop those red blood cells, increase in hemoglobin mass benefits that we get that help us both perform at sea level and at altitude.
So from a sort of sports science perspective then, do you think banning the matches was the right solution?
At the 2,500 metres, I think there was no need to ban it. I think anything that was around the kind of 4,000 metres, I don't think it's the game itself being played at altitude. I think if there's any underlying health conditions within the players.
At the time, clubs only had to release their players 5 days ahead of international matches, meaning they were left with no time to acclimatise under FIFA's new ruling. The outcry among South American countries was huge, in particular Bolivia, where the then president Evo Morales denounced the ban as discriminatory, arguing that it marginalised high-altitude nations. Morales vowed to lead a campaign to overturn the ban. Speaking after an emergency cabinet meeting, Morales told reporters, "This is not only a ban on Bolivia, it's a ban on the universality of sports." Much to his delight, the campaign garnered support from prominent football figures, including Diego Maradona. To protest FIFA's decision, he played in an hour-long game at Estadio Hernando Silas in La Paz, 3,600 metres above sea level, to show that if a 47-year-old could play there, so could fit young professionals. President Morales, a passionate footballer who, when not ruling Bolivia, played for an amateur second division team, joined Maradona in the game in one of football's strangest protests. So what was FIFA's response?
Despite initial resistance, FIFA modified the ban just a month after its introduction in June 2007, raising the altitude threshold from 2,500 metres to 3,000 metres. This adjustment reduced impact on some cities, but continued to exclude others. One Bolivian newspaper at the time claimed to have collected over 1 million petitions against the ban, and almost all South American football associations, excluding Brazil, expressed their opposition to it, committing to playing matches at venues selected by the host nations, regardless of altitude. Eventually, FIFA gave in. Following months of backlash and protest from South American football associations, the ban was lifted in May 2008. And despite further studies into the effects of altitude, it has never returned. But almost 20 years later, questions around altitude in football still haven't completely gone away. In fact, Dr. Daniel Snape and others recently submitted a study examining the physiological effects of heat and altitude on players at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link to the study in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my others on the screen now.